What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Just Win Baby podcast. And today on the show, we're joined by Rich once again. And it's victory lap week this week on the show. We had quite a week last week. Not all of our takes ended up coming through, but the ones that mattered, they came through in full force. And Rich was hitting on the prelims, hit a couple nice sub lines. I think they were all plus 300 and above to start off, but it was capped off by that main event. Erin Blanchfield all chips in on this show, and she ended up coming through for me big time. She ended up coming through for you even bigger. So the floor is yours, my man. Welcome back.
Thanks for the kind introduction. It's been an amazing week. Yeah, hit that Blanchfield money line, plus 135, 8 units in the distance, 2 units. Everyone was chatting shit. Now say something, you know? So yeah, it was really nice to cash that. And, in future, pay attention and, join the winning team.
I couldn't agree more. It was a good week, and hopefully we can keep the ball rolling. I think that we might have a little bit more dissension on this show, maybe even in the main event. But overall, I think that we got some great takes to unload. So let's start like we always do with the first fight of the night. We're going to be going Jose Johnson against Garrett Armfield. And this is a fight that I've done very little research on in terms of my focus and attention this week. I think you have a stronger take than me. So I'll kick this one over to you, Rich.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure that's the first fight. I'm seeing Peak as the first fight on some of the social medias. But yeah, Jose Johnson, not a fan. He lost his Dana White Contender Series fight. Then he had another opportunity. He won the second one by decision, barely. There was plenty of scrambles on the ground. I thought he was brought in to lose that one. But I think it was the British guy couldn't get it done. Really, he should have subbed him. So yeah, I don't like Johnson. He's got some opportunistic submissions off his back, got a bit of jiu-jitsu in him. But I like Armfield, strong wrestling. He's primarily a boxer. He's got fast hands. He pushes a very high pace. So yeah, I think Armfield's the side, the lines come in, and I don't mind him by KO.
I don't mind it. And the one thing is just a lot of losses on the Jose Johnson side. And that does make me a little bit skeptical because the UFC doesn't often bring in guys that have a lot of losses like that. And when they do, it's normally not to win. But that being said, I also mentioned to you, I think that he changed his name to Salsa Boy. But I think it used to be Platano Pride, Waldo Costa Cortez. They've been bringing in a few Dominican fighters. And I think that it's a market that they wouldn't mind building up. So that's one thing that's at least interesting to note on that side of things. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a fight I will be passing on in all likelihood. But it should be a fun fight to start the night. Both guys have flaws, so I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them got finished, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think it's very easy for people to look at Johnson and then look at Armfield and, be a Tapology bettor and say, oh, Armfield gets subbed. Johnson subs people. But I don't like that. I think Johnson subs something stupid as well. So, yeah, I don't think it's hitting. I think it's a trap. So, beware.
Well, Moise is on the other side on this one. He says he's got fishpole arms, a.k.a. sub is live. So fair play. I think that, that does open up opportunities. But I don't think that Armfield is necessarily an easy mark. I remember thinking before that fight that he had with Onama, and I bet on Onama by sub in that spot. But I don't think that that's the kind of, fight that we're going to see here necessarily. And also, those were two guys that had met before on the regional scene. Onama, I believe, had beaten them by decision. And Armfield was brought in on short notice, kind of just some factors that were going against him there. Plus, knowing that you've already lost to the guy is not really a confidence booster coming into a UFC debut on short notice. So I think all those factors have to be considered. Probably going to be considerably more confident coming in with a full training camp here in his second opportunity. Next up, Haley Cowan taking on Aylin Perez. And man, this is one of those fights where I wish that I hadn't heard everybody else's take about the fight because other people, kind of agree with me, and that always scares me a little bit. But It'll be interesting to see what the sharpest comments in the game have to say. Oftentimes we get a lot of really sharp commentary here, so appreciate everybody that's contributing in the chat. But as far as looking at this fight, I had a pretty sizable wager on Ailin Perez against Stephanie Egger. And I know that might look foolish in hindsight because she ends up losing the fight. She gets submitted. And I think that, sharp play was on Stephanie Egger to win that fight by sub. And it was also on Ailin Perez. I think people forget that the line came in considerably from where it opened. I bet the plus 275. Let me pull up best fight odds here to find out what that opened at. But I believe it opened around the plus 300 tag, and it ended up closing plus 200 or a little bit below. So a lot of sharp play came in when it was at the higher numbers. And it's just because this girl seems to have some natural fighting abilities. What I mean by that is just like, she doesn't have the best technique in the world, but she knows what position she needs to get in, stay on top, keep a little bit of weight heavy. And then she throws punches, attempts strikes, tries to finish people. She's aggressive. And I think that this is a much more winnable opportunity after all than the Stephanie Egger fight, because the grappling levels are just an eventuality. When she was so willing to engage in the grappling, that was a foolish cap by me in hindsight. But I still think that if I had interest in her against a pretty talented fighter in Stephanie Egger, who I'd bet in the past a number of times as an underdog, I got to take a look at the plus money here while it still exists. I got to take a look at the Ailin Perez side. Haven't bet it yet, but definitely dog or pass situation for me. I think Haley Cowan has some fraudulent vibes. I bet against her on Contender Series with that girl who also had fraudulent vibes because I thought that she could submit her. I thought that, she could test her in the grappling. And I think that Ailin Perez, while not an elite ground player, has been training at MMA Masters, has been putting in work with good people. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the kind of fight where she takes advantage, opportunistic finish. So yeah, I like Ailin Perez and potentially a sprinkle inside the distance. What do you think here?
Yeah, I think if you are going to bet on this fight, you need to hurry yourself up because I don't think she's going to be an underdog for long, Perez. She opened, plus 135. She's sitting around about plus 105 now, something like that. So I think come fight night, it's going to be a pick-em. Both fighters will probably be, minus 110, something like that. Yeah, I liked Perez. This week. I'm seeing a lot of not so sharp people on her, which scares me. It seems like she could be the mush of the week, Perez. So I really don't like that. Mush is a real thing. It exists. But in terms of the matchup, I don't like Cowan at all. She looks good. That's about as far as it goes. But in terms of fighting, she likes to stay on her back. I think she's got mental issues where she kind of checks out in the fight when she's facing adversity. In that Dana White Contender Series fight, 20 more seconds and she would have got choked out by that elite girl. That
would have made me coins. I had her inside the distance. I had her by sub. I was like, oh, it was a hope spot, man. Classic.
Round 2 as well. That girl had her in a rear naked choke. She had her in a head and arm choke. I watched that fight again, and you could see the corner of Haley. He was like, "Don't do it, Haley. Don't tap, Haley." And she didn't tap. He was like, "Good girl, get up." Mental issues. She needs a coach in her ear to get her through the fights. You go and watch her regional tape. She was fighting Brittany Cloudy. Brittany Cloudy had a rear naked choke in, and then the bell went. So the sub is live for Perez. I like her tenacity. You already said it. She's at MMA Masters. She's just a dog, man. And I think when the going gets tough, Cowan gets going, and Perez will fight more for your money. So this is a classic dog or pass situation. But like I say, a lot of square money on it. So beware.
The one thing I got to say is, thankfully, looking at the publicly available betting splits, it looks like the book is fairly balanced on this fight in terms of the money line, at least. Looking at the total, that's what I'm kind of interested in here. A lot of money. Very sharp distribution, though. About 30% of tickets, 72% handle on the under in this spot. So, I think that the sharp play here might be on Ailin Perez inside the distance, frankly. And that's probably where I'm going to look to play it. Read between the lines there. But next fight on the card, Nurullo Aliev is taking on Rafael Alves, because the UFC likes tongue twisters, I suppose. Aliev and Alves, lot different experience level here. Rafael Alves, 30 plus professional fights. On the other side, less than 10 professional fights. So not something that you see matched up every day. Aliev, a lot of experience going to decision though. So at least he does have some cage time. He's been in some fights, but has he blown my hair back? Have I been watching his tape thinking like this guy's the next coming? No, I haven't thought that. In terms of mushes, he's definitely somebody that the bookies are going to be rooting against this week. In all likelihood, number one, very popular play, but number two, doesn't appear to be moving extremely sharp. So looking at where he opened up, minus 210, there's been some reverse line movement, as a matter of fact. The market average is now sitting at about a minus 185 on the Aliev side, despite the fact that, public reporting is 78% of the handle is on him as a favorite. So you look at Rafael Alves, can you judge him for a loss to Damir Ismagulov, who was just on like a fight to decide like who's going to get that shot at the top 5 and the top 10 in the division? I'm not sure that you can. It went to decision. He dropped him in that fight. He had some moments. He couldn't finish. Okay, Damir Ismagulov's hard to put away. Ask Arman Sarukian. Put an absolute whooping on the guy. Couldn't put him away. So I think that when I look at that, and then I look at the fact that he lost to Drew Dober, I'm not going to hold that against him as like this guy's a terrible fighter and he's a mark for any newcomer off the street. Do I think he could get grinded out to a decision? Yes. Do I think he is prone to quitting later in his fights? Yes. But we haven't always seen that in the UFC from him. Like Drew Dober knocked his ass out, he did the same thing to Bobby Green. Bobby Green's not out there quitting in most of his fights. He just got finished there. So I think that these are the kind of fights where might be a little bit of recency bias, might be a little bit of public money influencing the Aliev side. He is one of the most followed fighters on the card, a lot of social media presence. And we saw that last week. That did not save our guy against Jamal Emmers. All the social media followers were in there in rounds 2 and rounds 3 when our guy was gassing out a little bit. So I think that, this is going to be a big test, a big opportunity as well. But I'm not necessarily sold on this newcomer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think people have been comparing him to Khabib.
He does look just like him, in fairness. I thought the same thing from the first time I saw him. I was like, are they bringing in a Khabib from this part of the world now? Just like looking for a Khabib-esque guy from different parts of the world? Not a bad strategy, I guess.
Yeah, well, he's undefeated and, he fights like him, I guess, goes for the takedowns. But he really doesn't. If he's anything like Khabib, is the Walmart version. Someone in the chat said it best. Alves is guillotine or bust, which is how I think this fight is. But yeah, I'm not sold on this Russian guy. He's got no stand-up. He literally just wants to take you down straight away. He's got no submissions. So all he wants to do is stay in your guard, land some ground and pound like he did on the Dana White Contender Series fight against that young kid who really was a bum. So yeah, Alves has got to be a good dog this week. The Russian, he usually wins when people give up. Like you said, Alves has got his problems. It wasn't a good look against Damir, but Damir's Damir, so you can't blame him for that loss. But he did spend a round on his back and didn't make any efforts to get up in one of the rounds. So I can see why you play the Russian, but in his debut, I don't know, man. I think this is a good dog opportunity. But like the guy Phyllis said in the chat, it's guillotine or bust. I wouldn't mind a sub bet on here. Hail Mary guillotine maybe.
The one thing I will say about Alves, though, I do think he can crack. I think he can knock somebody out on the feet. I don't know that he has enough time necessarily spent on the feet in this fight to do so. That's the danger, obviously. Like you said, Aliev's probably going to be looking to get on top the entire fight. But Alves on the feet does throw. He's willing. He'll do some crazy stuff, too. He'll throw jump knees and stuff. And I think that's where, I think good point from Glenbot, Alves ITD. I don't think that's a terrible shout, but I would also think definitely, I prefer splitting the stake. If I really think it's going to be a sub and the sub line is the optimal line, it's the best line, I'll put, maybe half my stake on that. And then I'll put half my stake on the ITD so I don't come away empty-handed if it goes the other way, crying in my coffee. I ended up cashing out a Blanchfield sub bet last week at plus 500, but then I ended up betting the Blanchfield in under 2.5 at plus 540. So sometimes the optimal bet is just it's a one tweak away. So nothing wrong with looking for that optimal bet here. And I think the sub is probably the best one. But I also think there might be some value on the ITD So keep that in mind. Next up, we got Joe Selecki and Carl Deaton III. And this is a pretty interesting fight. Deaton wasn't quite what I expected. Kind of a lower volume guy on the feet, but seems to have some power. He knocked down a lot of guys in the tape that I saw. But that being said, he doesn't have the greatest finishing instincts. A lot of times he knocks somebody down and he just lets them back up to the feet. His wrestling and his striking don't seem to flow together perfectly. But he also does wrestle a decent bit in his fights. He was out wrestling Justin James for almost the duration of their last fight, but did stick his head in some dangerous places. I think that Selecki is going to be a step ahead of him on the ground, a little bit more professional in the grappling, but I don't think that Selecki's striking is anything to write home about. I'm a little bit concerned for him if this fight remains at distance that he could get hurt or dropped, but I don't necessarily think Deaton can finish him because I don't think he'll follow him to the ground. It would need to be like a clean one-punch knockout because I think if he does follow him to the ground, Selecki could still reverse him from there. He's a tricky guy off his back. So I like the Selecki side here, but I don't love the huge chalk price. I would not be laying this on the money line in all likelihood, but Selecki by sub just seems like the most likely outcome to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I have the whole card. This is the only fight I didn't look at. I've been busy. KSW, PFL, Bellator. I ain't got time to look at shit like this. Selecki should win by submission. I don't think Deaton's the one to knock him out. I think Selecki's too strong, especially round one. And I've seen, like you said, Deaton in compromising positions on the ground. And if you give them opportunities to Selecki, he's going to wrap something up. But I ain't paying the chalk price either. So just pass.
Yeah, a documentary came out about Selecki this week for whatever that's worth. Just a couple of things like that. He's obviously the much more well-known fighter. I think I sent to you my social media report this week, Rich, which all my stuff is available, Lab VIP, all the information's below. But, on the social media report, I think he had 453 followers. I mean, he's probably going to have more by the time fight week rolls around. But, this guy was a virtual unknown. He's been fighting pretty tough guys, but it's been on the very obscure regional scene type level where he hasn't really broken through from a star-making, brand-making standpoint. He did call a first-round knockout for whatever it's worth. That's what he said he's going for in this fight. And he basically started MMA just as an MMA guy, been working since he was 18 years old. No background in wrestling, no background in anything else officially. But he comes from an area where, wrestling's very common. He comes from Michigan. So interesting fellow, seems like a pretty tough kid. I think he's tough kid. I mean, he's older than me, but you know what I'm saying? Seems like a tough guy coming in, but I don't know that I really project him to have a top 5 or a top 10 or a top 15 ceiling. I think he's going to be fighting in the lower echelon of the division, but I think he could win some UFC fights. Don't think this is a great matchup for him. I think he's very likely to get submitted here because he makes some positional mistakes when he wrestles, small ones that could cost you the fight in the front headlock. And if you guys saw Selecki's finish on Dana White Contender Series, it was disgusting how tight he had that guillotine. He was twisting the guy's head off. He's very talented there. What were you going to say, Rich?
Yeah, why is he even here? Like you said, he's 33 years old, which we know Dana doesn't like. He said it many times on Dana White Contender Series. He doesn't like over 30s. He's bringing this guy in. His record's poor. He's been fighting in the lower leagues. He hasn't got anyone notable on his record. Justin James, who's pretty much a nobody. Why is he here, man? It just makes no sense.
He beat Nate Williams twice, Justin James. I wouldn't say that there's another huge standout win among them. He's beaten some guys with negative records recently as well. A lot of canceled fights, though, for him. So he's had a tough career. I think part of the reason that he's getting the opportunity is just because he's stayed ready. I think he had a fight coming up as well that he was scheduled for. So another cancellation to add to the record, but it was supposed to be on 2/24. I think that he was definitely going to be ready for this fight date. So for whatever that's worth, he should come in with some decent cardio, and that's never been the selling point for Joe Selecki, in fairness. I think he even lost the first round against Jim Miller, but I had him by decision that night.
To be honest,
he's an interesting character. Yeah,
I hope he wins. I don't like Selecki. I don't like Grant Dawson. I don't like these people who all they want is takedowns and submissions. I find their fights boring. So I hope Selecki gets his ass knocked out, to be honest. So yeah, let's go.
Maybe a fight not to go the distance here. Let me see what that's priced at, because I actually think that that's the best chance for Wow, it's only minus 170. I mean, Selecki could definitely like grease his way to a decision here. I'm not saying that's out of the realm. So I probably don't like that. Yeah, Deaton to miss weight, minus 160. Yeah, that's probably true. Good point, Jason. Has missed weight a couple times regionally. And he's a guy that's fought at very low weight classes. But if you guys see him, I can see why it's hard for him to make weight. He's just got like a really wide back. He's kind of like Beneil Dariush. You know what I'm saying? Like just one of these guys that's got a weird build. Like awkwardly built in the back. Like he's just hard to get a hold of. That's kind of what he brings to the table. But yeah, I think Selecki, he's just too advanced and he's seen it all on the ground. So I think he should submit him. Next up, folks, Ode Osborne taking on Charles Johnson. What should be an interesting contest here. Two guys that are both in their early 30s in a division where people age out pretty quickly. So it's kind of time for them to get moving. Ode Osborne, he's been on the wrong end of some finished losses in the UFC. That's obviously not going to inspire great confidence in trying to back somebody in their fights. Charles Johnson, a little bit of luck with that Jalga Zhumagulov decision, but, he's also done a pretty good job accounting for himself in the UFC. Makayev, really tough assignment. Not much he could do there except try and stay safe, not get finished. He did a good job of that. Just had a hard time getting any kind of positional wins there against somebody who could out-wrestle and out-grapple him. In subsequent performances, he's done very well. Jimmy Flick never had a hope in that fight, unfortunately, just from the way that Charles was dictating the range, holding position, landing his shots cleanly in the early going. I think that all those things are going to be available against Ode. I think Ode is more dangerous on the counter. I think he's certainly a much more dangerous one-hit counter striker. He's got power of his own to write home about, but I'm not sure what to make of this fight because on the one hand, I think there's some recency bias baked into the Charles Johnson side. But on the other hand, I think that Ode Osborne just has clear, flaws in this game that can be exploited, including his chin. Just seems to be a little bit of a liability at this weight class. And I think that Charles could potentially take advantage. So what do you think here, Rich?
That Ode versus CJ Vergara fight was very scary. Like I'd never get that out of my head. Ode really dropped the ball there. I don't rate Vergara, and he just gassed big time Ode. Yeah, I really like Johnson. I like his style. I like his, the way he gets back up to his feet. His takedown defense isn't the best. Never been subbed, never been KO'd. The line's a bit surprising to me. He's only minus 160. I think he started around about minus 190 beginning of the week. So that's surprising on Johnson. I thought he would have pushed out to minus 200 or something. I think he's the clear favorite here. I think he can get a KO in the later rounds. I think he's going to chill round one, maybe, see what that power is like, see what Ode's coming with. And then I think he's going to push the pace. And I like Johnson to finish in round 2 or 3. But I'd be wary playing the KO because I even think he could snatch up the neck. If you go watch his fights, Johnson, he's got a couple of submission wins. He likes them front chokes, darters, whatever. So yeah, I'd be wary playing him by KO. And I think the sub could be live.
Interesting. I like it. And the only concerning thing is, like you mentioned, the line's kind of not moving as much as you'd expect because there is some money coming in on the Charles Johnson side, a lot of money coming in on the under here. So maybe those late round sprinkles are a good way to target it after all. So I like where your head's at. I think that Charles Johnson is probably the side here, but it's not a fight that I have tremendous conviction behind either. I did bet Zalgas against him. I thought that he won that fight, so I don't want to get ahead of myself on Charles Johnson. He could still, give up fights and positions. He got hit cleanly by Zalgas. I thought he got hurt pretty badly in that fight too. So Ode does have power on the comeback. I think that that's the concern on the Ode side. Let me look at what Ode by KO is priced at. About plus 375, best available. Yeah, the best available prices are on both of them to win by knockout on Bet Online. So that's always a concern if you're on the KO side of things. So I'm sure you're feeling a little bit better about that, Rich. But anyways, we can move along here to the next fight on the card, which is going to be in the lightweight division. Jordan Levitt is taking on Victor Martinez at 155 pounds. And the Monkey King, I love the gifts for this guy. I love, the antics, all this stuff. He's a funny guy. I think that his grappling at times is like a touch overrated. At times it's been underrated in the UFC. But I think that this is a tricky matchup. Victor Martinez seems to be a tough guy. I think he does expose, some holes on the feet potentially from Jordan Levitt. Jordan Levitt in his bio, he talks about like 10 knockdowns to 2 received in his career. This is not a fight. Yeah, I think Moyes might have hit this on the head as well. He said pass, pass, pass. I think that that's fair, man. I don't have any action on this fight right now. But frankly, when you talk about somebody that's being potentially a mushed favorite, Jordan Levitt is potentially right in that spot this week. You know, a lot of people are betting on the Jordan Levitt side. According to the publicly available splits this week, Jordan Levitt, 81% handle at a minus 130. That ain't good. And, you know, it's not just handle. It's not a very sharp distribution, 74% of tickets as well. My man, Understand Boxing, I'm sure, would not be a big fan of Jordan Levitt because he's not doing a lot with the hands. He's mostly out there looking for submissions. Like you said, not your kind of fighter, certainly. I respect the jiu-jitsu hustle. I respect anybody that can make jiu-jitsu work in MMA. But the Trey Ogden fight, for example, is where it bores me to tears. I like grappling too, but not like that. You know, I like to see people that are dynamic, going for offense. And when he did that against Paddy Pimblett, he completely gassed out in 7 minutes, which is a concern. He's been a pro for a while. You know, grappling should be the thing that he's not getting gassed out doing, and he completely gassed out there. Is Paddy Pimblett probably on better steroids than him? Yes. Is Paddy Pimblett huge for the weight class because he cuts a bunch of weight? Yes. But is that a concern when you're getting out-grappled by Paddy Pimblett? Yeah, it is for me when you're supposed to be grappling first as like your whole selling point. So this is a fight where Jordan Levitt definitely can win, and he could win by sub. I think he's a talented fighter, but I also think that people are getting a little out over their skis here because if he doesn't get to his positions, if he doesn't get the fight to the floor, this is probably going to look like a hindsight favorite, probably to a big margin on the other side. So when you're capping these fights, you have to think about the potential of things going poorly. You know, things don't always go the way that a fighter expects. And if this doesn't go how Jordan Levitt expects in the wrestling department, then he could get tuned up on the feet here. And that's kind of what I would expect. So how do you feel about this one, Rich?
I can't believe all the love that Jordan's getting this week, to be honest. It makes zero sense to me at all. You know, he reminds me of the other guy later on the card, Mike Malott, Chase Hooper, them kind of people who were like relying on submissions. And I know Mike Malott knocked out Mickey Gall, but, you know, that doesn't mean much to me. So, yeah, I just don't understand how people are even betting his money line. Like, why don't you just bet him by submission? If you're going to bet him, you know, that's his win condition. If he's going to have any type of success, it's going to be in the grappling. We've seen on the other side that Martinez has been sub before, and he gets his back taken. So if you're betting Levitt, why don't you just bet sub? But anyway, you want my opinion on the fight. Levitt's going to get knocked out. I'm betting Martinez. I'm betting the knockout. I don't like what I see from Jordan. Like you said, I can respect that he's made a career out of this and the way that he fights. But to watch him fighting, it's just disgusting. He, what's that one fight I watched? He didn't throw a single strike until round 3. I think it was Trey Ogden, that fight. He doesn't throw hands, man. He doesn't want to engage because he doesn't want to get counted. He wants to stay on the outside, throw these kicks that aren't even intentional to hurt you. They're just to keep you away from him. So he's happy to win the decision with these shitty leg kicks from range. If you then get into range with him, he'll grapple and try and tie you up. I think his grappling's overrated as well. You know, he doesn't take the back, doesn't put hooks in. Yeah, he's got submissions. We can give him that to, like, you know, lesser opponents like fucking Matt Sales, who's been subbed like 100 times. So yeah, I'm betting Martinez. I like the KO as well at the number, and I think Jordan loses, man.
Yeah, and I would have to favor this fight not going the distance, you know, which it is favored not to go the distance. I think that that's a side. When I look at both these guys, they just have clear vulnerabilities where I think that the cardio is a liability as well as potentially the lack of hands. If you're not throwing meaningful offense back, it's a lot easier for me to get off on my heavy strikes against you. And then conversely, you know, if one guy is just going to be potentially sub or bust, he's going to sell out. If he gets to a position, he's going to go all in. He's going to try and finish. And that will potentially lead to him gassing out. So it's like a two-edged coin, and I feel like it leads to the fight not going the distance here. A pretty good clip. So I like that as the side.
Yeah, I like that.
Levitt by sub is just a terrible number, man. You know, I don't really like playing sub lines unless they're below plus 300. I used to do it from time to time, and then I got Gunnar Nelson, and I was like, all right, I'm out forever. If it's chalk, it's done. It's dead to me. It's DOA. It's gone. So, you know, occasionally you'll look at like a plus 250 or something like that if it's just a complete mismatch. But, I mean, plus 215 when I don't think that, you know, it's not represented by his money line. You know, they're not showing a ton of confidence there. So, yeah, I don't like that at all. I do think they should be correlated, though. So that makes sense to a degree. Anyways, we can move on to the next fight here. Gabriela Fernandez taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. And this is more of a market read for me than anything else. But the Gabriela Fernandez side is definitely the more public side in terms of the ticket count. But the money that matters, you know, the bigger dollars have been coming in on Jasmine, and I get it. You know, Jasmine in her last fight was a pretty popular side, and she got schooled, right? She just got beat up in that fight. It was a bad loss. However, when I look at Jasmine coming into that fight, I understand why people like her as well. She's a tough girl. She's aggressive. She comes forward. She looks to get into good position. She's big, physical for the weight class. So she brings a lot of things to the table. But she was facing a faster opponent who's got dynamic kicks at range. And, you know, we see that can make a huge impact. Look at William Knight against Marcin Prachnio. One guy throws kicks. One guy doesn't throw kicks. One guy beat the shit out of the other guy for the entire fight easily because he just kicked him. And the other guy didn't do anything back because he was afraid of getting kicked. So I think that when I'm looking at this fight, you know, Jasmine's probably not at a huge kicking disadvantage here, as big as she was in the last fight. But I still don't necessarily love it. I would like a little bit higher plus money, so I might pass on the money line here. But if I was going to play it again, it would be a dogger pass for me. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, just refreshing on this Fernandez girl. I think Jasmine's the side. I don't know how you can't bet her here. I know she's got her problems. She really has. But I think she's taken her first L now in the octagon. She's going to learn from that. And I don't like what I'm seeing from this Fernandez girl. I don't like her level of competition. I don't like her off her back. Her takedown defense is poor, like really poor. She's like some surfing instructor or something I've seen from Instagram. Yeah, she's big, and I know her pictures look good on Instagram. I've seen somebody post it, you know, she's got abs and she's toned and that, and she's a big girl. But that doesn't translate to her being a decent fighter. You know, go and look at her latest fights against Martins and Oliveira. Martins, she tapped from a guillotine choke. She held it for like a minute and it wasn't even in. Then she just decided to tap. It wasn't even applied properly. And then before that, she was fighting this Edna Oliveira, who was like 5'1" or something. Yeah, poor level of competition. I think Jasmine's the side, and I'll probably take her for a unit or so. She's a dog. I don't know about any in the distance or any type of stuff like that. You know, it is women's MMA. But yeah, I think she's going to get takedowns. I think the successes for Jasmine here is going to be the takedowns. It's going to be a boring decision, probably. She's just going to lay on her.
Yeah, I would have to agree. This is, you know, among the women's fights, I think this is the one that's much more likely to go to decision. You look at Jasmine historically, she likes to win the round. She likes to try and, you know, prove things to the judges, like shorter shots, things like that. Not as much of what she does is super damaging, which is why I think she got battered in her last fight. Her opponent was trying to hurt her and she was trying to score points. So then she was scared to engage because she was getting hurt by the shot. So I think that, you know, she's a tough girl. She trains with the right people. In terms of her Canadian training, she also cross trains at American Top Team with a lot of women that are similar size, talented UFC women. So I think that in terms of her room for growth and improvement, we can expect to see some of that here. And I also think that she's training with Olympic level wrestlers. She's training with very talented people when she's training in Canada, including Mike Malott, who's also featured on the card. So just some synchronicity. Mayra Buena Silva just fought and got a win last week. One of her primary training partners at American Top Team when she's been down there. So these are the kind of things that I like to see where, you know, the whole camp is geared towards one thing, which is getting people ready for upcoming fights. And that's what we've been seeing from her. So I expect a better performance than we saw last time. And certainly that could merit a shot as an underdog. Next up, guys, we will be kicking off the main card. Just want to say this show, everything I do is brought to you by PrizePicks, simplest game in DFS. If you guys want to give it a try, go to PrizePicks.com. The information is in the description below. You can use promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. Without further ado, the main card. Let's kick it off. Eric Gonzalez taking on Trevor Peek. You have to think somebody's going to sleep in this fight. You know, on the one hand, Gonzalez not historically super easy to knock out. Jim Miller, I believe, the first man to accomplish that task. But Trevor Peek, on the other hand, he's never lost, you know, as a professional, 7-0. But it's not like he hasn't been on the verge. He's been hurt. He's been dropped. He's been in some dangerous situations. He definitely doesn't seem like a guy who's extremely composed and reliable out there. But he also is a dog. He'd fight for your money. Last time out, I bet him, I believe it was plus 250 for him to win by knockout on the Contender Series. Was able to hit a nice bet there. But now I'm looking at a plus 110 to win by knockout. So they've definitely nerfed that as his like primary win condition. So I don't love to see that. Plus, we just mentioned Gonzalez, one knockout loss to Jim Miller. Really savvy vet. Kind of sneaky power, too. Everybody expects Jim to get you with the subs, but he just hits damn hard. He throws the hook with bad intentions. So he's put a couple guys down in recent bouts. I don't think that that's something I'm going to hold against him. That was his UFC debut, too, if my memory serves. So Eric Gonzalez, do I rate him as like a future world champion, a contender, a top 15? No. But do I think that this is a winnable fight for him? You know, as winnable as it gets in the UFC? Yeah, I think probably this is one of them. Do I think that he could get knocked out brutally here? I absolutely do. So violence is, for me, the number one you know, priority here. The under 1.5 rounds is pretty juiced, and it seems like a super public play. Let me go check. So I don't want to speak out of turn here. Only 69% of the reported handle is on the under here, at about a 65% indication. So close to a balanced book. I think that, yeah, this fight's probably very likely to go under. I think both these guys have some deficiencies defensively, but they're also super aggressive. They're both going to be hungry for a win. Peek making his debut, but also a couple of guys, you know, with connections to Tennessee on this card. Take that for whatever it's worth. I don't know if it means anything, but just something when you start researching all the fighters on the card, you just notice these weird little patterns. And Peek is one of the he's number one ranked pound for pound in Alabama and Tennessee. And I believe that Ryan Spann is from Memphis originally. So just for whatever it's worth, a couple guys on the card getting some love from the South. So shout out Trevor Peek on the main card. But he's got his hands full, you know, a guy with 3 times the professional experience, you know, twice as many professional wins and, you know, unfortunately as many losses as Peek has wins. So that's why you can't be super confident on the Gonzalez side either. He's got a lot of experience. He's got a lot of experience losing. So you can't be too overconfident, but I do think he certainly fits the bill as live here because in the grappling, he doesn't look like a zero. You know, I think he could definitely offer some resistance here and potentially be live to win the fight by sub. What do you think about that? Am I out to lunch?
Yeah, when I first looked at it, I thought fight doesn't go the distance should be like minus $1 million. I don't see how this goes the distance. But, you know, looking into it, you know, this Gonzalez guy, this is his fight to lose, man. The only problem I've got with him, he doesn't seem the most intelligent guy in the world, or that he's got a, you know, a sufficient game plan coming in to his fights. You know, he walks forward recklessly. He puts his hands down. You know, it looks like he loves to fight. We've seen the Jim Miller one. He got Jim hurt a little bit. He does carry some power. And on the other side, we look at this guy, Peek. He's strong as fuck. You know, I've seen him on bottom and he do the Derek Lewis where he just shrugs guys off. No technique. He's just back to his feet. So, yeah, I like him. He throws everything into every shot, though. He's not that technical on the feet. He you know, he hits the overhand right too much. You know, he looks for that. So he's not the most technical. And then you look again on the other side at Gonzalez. He's only been knocked out once, and that was by Jim Miller in like 20, 25 fights. So, yeah, tough one to call, man. I'd even be wary playing the unders. I could see Gonzalez, if he's got a tiny bit of IQ about him, coming in and implementing a wrestling-heavy game plan. I think that's, you know, Peek's kryptonite here. But it's all about trust, and I don't trust him, man.
You know what I think is really interesting here to bring up as well. I did listen to the interviews on this fight, and I listened to some people talk about this as well. And Peak said that he did not like the fact that there was no audience at the Apex. Like, it was the first time in his career that people weren't going apeshit when he was fighting. He's right back here. He's not. They could have put him on the San Antonio card. They could have put him, on any of these upcoming fight cards, and they didn't. They put him just back on a UFC Fight Night card. And I think that's interesting. Whereas you got Eric Gonzalez on the other side. He's done the company a couple favors. He's taken a couple L's. He's done a couple hard jobs for them. Now they're giving him a winnable fight. It's not a layup. He's going to have to take some hard punches, but it's like they're saying, hey, you want to, you've done some things for us. Here's a fight that you could win. Here's a fight that's going to be all fun, all action, on the feet, how you want it. I think it's going to be a banger. And that's why I think it ends early. I think both these guys are willing to engage, but that's a recipe for disaster. And you're seeing some sharp play come in on the sub line on Gonzalez. Has dropped already pretty considerably. So maybe I might have to sit it out because it's already been hit down by some other people that feel the same way. But yeah, I think that Understand Boxing hit the nail on the head. They both react pretty badly to punches to their faces, and this is a cage fight after all. So it should be an interesting one to watch play out. But I expect violence here personally because I don't think these guys know any other way. Next up, folks, Canada versus Canada. As I saw somebody say, Canada will get one win this week in the UFC no matter what. They have to make it that way. But I'll tell you what, I think that JJ's live, and I think that this is a great fight. This is actually a pretty well-matched fight. You have on the one hand Mike Malott, striking coach, I believe at Team Alpha Male, but he's also done some cross-training in Canada, Niagara Top Team. He's been all over. He started at 145. If you guys have watched his old footage, he got flatlined by Hakeem Dawodu. But Mike is a pretty tough guy. He is savvy. He's crafty. He's worked on his submission game to bring it up to speed a little bit because it used to be a huge deficiency. And now I would say that his jiu-jitsu is dangerous. When he gets people into that guillotine, it's money. And I know a good guillotine when I see one. So I'm telling you, it's a good damn guillotine. It's very dangerous. And he could finish Johan with that move because the one thing that I don't love about Johan in this matchup in particular, he loves and favors the double leg. He's a blast double leg guy. And that could work to his benefit if he's able to pass the legs. If he doesn't pass the legs, he can put himself right into a guillotine and go to sleep. So I think that that's going to be an interesting dynamic. I'm hopeful that if I'm on the Johan side this week, Johan is not going to shoot takedowns in this fight, and he's going to keep it upright because he hits like a truck. I've seen him knock guys dead with a flying knee. I've seen him knock guys dead with punches. He is a very big hitter. He carries a lot of power. Is he a little bit of a gasser? Yes. Do we have any reason to believe that Mike Malott is a cardio machine? No. No evidence to suggest that whatsoever. So for me, it's kind of betting into the unknown here, where if you're super confident on the Mike Malott side, you're saying he's got the talent, he's got the ability to get this done in round one. I know that. He's done it a bunch of times, and he's going to do it again, which he definitely can. But Johan did just go to decision. I know it was with Darian Weeks. He was brought in as an enhancement talent, so to speak. Wasn't brought in and positioned to get a bunch of UFC wins. They gave him a bunch of very tough assignments. So now you've got Johan on the mend here, said that he didn't really focus on strength and conditioning at any point in his career. And that's all he's been focused on leading up to this training camp. That's all he's wanted to do. I would not be surprised if Johan ended up having the better cardio of these two down the stretch. And I know that that's a bold take. I know. But I'm saying that there's no reason to believe that Mike Malott has extremely good cardio. We haven't seen it tested. And I think that Johan, the thing that saps people of cardio that people don't realize is damage. If I hurt you a bunch of times, it's very hard for me to just pretend, oh yeah, I'm going about my exercise like normal. No, like now my body's using my resources internally to fix things, to try and deal with the fact that, oh, my face just got caved in. So I think that both these guys are live to win by knockout. I think that Mike Malott is certainly the much more competent submission grappler, but Johan outlasting him and finishing him in the second round would not surprise me either. I think both these guys will be dead and leaning on each other like two drunks at the bar if this goes into the third round. So for me, Canadian MMA, a lot of questions and volatility. Give me the underdog or leave it alone. I do think Mike Malott is talented, by the way, but I think that I can't trust him at this point. Took a big gap in his career, by the way. People forget about this. Kind of just was doing other things, moved up 3 weight classes. Like, I think he's a talented guy, but beating Mickey Gall doesn't tell me you're just going to beat any generic welterweight they put in there with you. And Johan has surprised people before. Justin Burlinson was a big, prospect coming into the Contender Series. Everybody was talking about how he's going to run through him, and then Johan knocks him dead, like he did to a bunch of other guys that he was an underdog to in CFFC. So just be wary. A lot of people have faded Johan his whole career. He looks like a gasser, and then he'll be gassed with his mouth open, throw a flying knee, and somebody dies. So just be careful. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, there's so much to say about this fight, man.
And not much of it good.
Yeah, when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, this is volatile as fuck, isn't it? You've pretty much got a guy who's going to win by KO, or you've got a guy who's going to win by submission. I think, looking into it, that Mike Malott was brought in to lose against Mickey Gall. I don't rate his stand-up at all. I know he knocked out Mickey, but I think he just caught him, to be honest. And Mickey's stand-up isn't the best. But I think the UFC like what they have or had in Mickey Gall. I don't even know whether he's still fighting for the UFC.
I think they let him go after that one.
Did they let him go?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, they brought in this guy who's basically only got submissions, and he comes in and knocks him fucking out. He should be cut for that. Because I think his stand-up's terrible. I likened it to Jordan Levitt's earlier on, or Chase Hooper's. He hates getting hit. He scrunches his face up like he's having an anxiety attack whenever he gets punched, Mikey. I like the Johan side, man. And I like what you said earlier. We don't know what Malott's cardio is like. All his finishes are in round one. I know that it starts on the feet. And I know that he's going to get tagged by Johan before he gets a takedown. If he even gets a takedown, what's his wrestling really like? Have we really seen how good of a wrestler he is? So yeah, I like the Johan sign. I like that they've trained together as well. I think that it would have been sparring, obviously. And I think Johan would have got the better. So I think Malott knows that his number's up in the striking, and he's going to shoot him for some desperation takedowns straight away. I don't think he's going to get him, and I think he's going to get tagged and likely knocked out. But yeah, I wouldn't even call it for the first round. I could see it being extended. I've listened to the interviews by Johan. He said he's going to take his time, stay on the outside, pick his shots. So I could see a staring match for the first round, and then, Malott running out of ideas and doing like a Menfield versus OSP where he just walks face first and gets knocked out.
Yeah, I think that Mike is talented when he gets inside of range, when he gets into the pocket, when he can make it like a back and forth exchange. That's why he was fucking up Mickey Gall so bad. But when he's at distance, when he's like kept at the length of a jab, like somebody like Hakeem Dawood, who kind of enforces range in his fights. When he wasn't doing that, he was getting hit by Mike. But when he was doing that, Mike didn't like it. Like you mentioned, he kind of is very reactive to the shots coming back at him. So if you let him lead, if you let him take space and come inside on you, he's extremely dangerous. But Johan has a couple different ways to intercept that, which is that he throws big looping shots that could kill you, so you don't want to come into range. But then also he randomly jumps in the air and like takes wild chances. And that again makes it hard to come forward with confidence. So I'm interested to see what happens here if Mike Malott pursues him. I think that's his best chance. Like you mentioned, put pressure on, try and take him down. But I would not be surprised if it ends up being Johan applying the pressure. He's huge at welterweight. He looks like a very menacing opponent. So I think both these guys are dangerous.
Shall I tell you what I think is going to happen here? I don't think Mike's going to throw anything, Malott. He's going to do nothing. I watched that Hakeem fight. He jerks in and out. He looks like he's a boxer, karate, kickboxing guy. He'll do all the movement, but he's not throwing anything, man. He's just imitating a fighter. And that's how he got knocked out by Hakeem. He can fight the lower level people. He can hit his submissions when someone fucks up, like that. Was it that Renfo guy? He slipped on the mat and ended up getting choked. But yeah, he's not a fighter, man. He isn't going to throw anything because he's going to be scared to get countered. I think he's going to be a pussy. He's going to stay on the outside. They're going to have a staring match, round 2. He's just going to get flatlined, man. I think he's too scared. That's my opinion.
I hear you. I think that Mike is going to come forward. I do think that, but will he be shooting, level change takedowns right off the rip? I wouldn't be surprised if he did that here either. He has transitioned much more later in his career to being like a grapple heavy fighter. Like you mentioned, going for the guillotine chokes, but also, we've just seen in his approach outside the octagon, taking grappling matches, engaging in the grappling world intentionally. I don't think that's by accident. I think that's because he's been tagged several times on the feet and hurt a little bit. So he probably knows it's wise to take these fights to the ground where the volatility is a little bit less.
Another thing that's worth mentioning is the Johan fights. He fought Green. Green is a cardio machine, man. He just comes forward. He's got a good chin. He never lets up. And that obviously that pressure was just too much for Johan. And Weeks has a similar game plan. He's just a bit, less pressure than Green. And Johan was able to like keep up with him, man. So I've seen cardio improvements in him already. I think this line's well off, I know he got a knockout in his last fight, Malott. But I think Johan's been disrespected, man. Minus 200 for Mike. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Mike is a good fighter, but I don't think that this is a layup matchup. And I think that there's a ceiling to what Mike has been doing. So maybe he comes out here and shows 15 minutes of cardio that we didn't expect. God bless him for it, but I think the upside's with the underdog here.
If Johan takes him down, I'll go fucking crazy. I can see it, man.
Dude. I know, like, I actually can see it too. That's why I'm not as bullish on this as I probably should be. But the other thing to just mention here, there was some sharp play on the KO. Went from 4-1 down to 3.5 to 1 on the original market. All the other books opened up at plus 350, basically in reaction to that. So, I think that Understand Boxing hit the nail on the head here. That is not a fight to lay juice on. Makes sense to me. Next up, folks, we have the returning Tatiana Suarez taking on Montana De La Rosa. And I got to say, guys, I'm fired up about this one because Patchy Mix is our absolute homie on this show. I don't bet Bellator. I just bet Patchy Mix. And I think that as far as I'm concerned, Tatiana Suarez is pretty clearly the side here. You don't often see in women's MMA somebody open up -7. What did she open up at?
800.
Really? Wow. Either way, that's what she's sitting at right now, -800 on sharp markets. And that's pretty much unplayable. But I think she's going to win the fight. When you look at the stylistic matchup, Montana De La Rosa is fresh off getting out-wrestled in previous bouts. It's not like she's been out-wrestling all of her previous opposition. Now she's got the best wrestler of her career. That's a bad recipe. I think that when I look at Tatiana Suarez and what she brings to the table, number one, she's training with very good fighters in Las Vegas. I think that the room that they have, 125, 135, is as good as you could find anywhere in the world. The Aljamain Sterlings, the Merab Dvalishvilis, the Basharat brothers. You talk about, there's just a lot of talent that's coalesced around that facility. Now, when I look at Patchy and all these rounds that she could potentially be getting, I think to myself, sub at plus 300, obviously going to grab some attention. Now, the concern is she's coming back off a long layoff, longest on the card. If you guys don't follow me at Liam Picks Fights. I'm always tweeting out information about these fights in the lead up. And that's one of the things I noted this week. The longest layoff for anybody on the card, Tatiana Suarez, over 3 years, over 3.5 years. But I think she's going to come back ready to go. I think that in terms of women that could take a break and come back and already like have such a level gap on the competition that they could take a break and come back, I think she's one of them. Her wrestling is much better than the division. I think that she's going to come back and absolutely dominate in the wrestling anybody that she decides to, right? So at 125, unless it's Erin Blanchfield, unless it's somebody that's really, really credible with their jiu-jitsu, we're not really having a conversation for me. I feel like she's going to dominate them. And I think that, if Montana De La Rosa comes out here and sprawls and brawls and keeps it on the feet, then I'm just wrong about MMA. I don't see that happening. I think that Tatiana is going to rip her to the ground. I think she's going to take her back. I think she's going to do whatever she wants to her. And my only concern, like I said, is that she wants the cage time. She wants to get back in there, get the feel, see if she can go the full 15 minutes. Unlike some other fighters, like we mentioned, Mike Malott, it's a question mark because he's not doing it. She's done that a number of times. I don't think that's really a question for her, except that she's coming back. She's been on a long layoff. For me, this screams statement victory. This screams Tatiana Suarez is going to try and take her down, put an absolute beating on her, and finish her later on in the fight. Think Misha Tate, Marion Renault, showcase fight. Get out there, get the rounds, get the cardio in, work myself for the full, 12 minutes, and then start pursuing the finish aggressively. That's what I expect to see here. Tatiana Suarez, probably in round 3. What do you think?
I agree, bro. I think, yeah, she's had loads of time off, but I don't think she's going to have missed a step. Obviously, she did a rehab. She's at a good camp. She's got Patchy mixed with her. I think she's ready. Before the injury, she was on her way to on her way to the title, the type of fights they were giving her. She was beating Alexa Grasso, rear naked choke. Carla Esparza just dominated. We know what a good wrestler Carla is. She just dominated her, broke her. Anything like her former self, and she rolls here. I went and watched some tape on her. Montana, I hate to see her lose, man. I follow two girls on Instagram. One is Montana and one is Erin Blanchfield. For obvious reasons, they're just my girls. They're the type I like. But yeah, she's taking an L here. She's going to likely get finished. Also, go watch Montana versus Andrea Lee, round 3, and go watch it versus Barella in round 1. That's how this fight's going to go. She shells up, she turtles up. I think Suarez is going to take the back, probably get the hooks in, flatten her out. Be wary playing the submission because she can just unload for the ground and pound. But I think Suarez ITD is the one to bet here. This is a layup fight. The UFC love Suarez. They want to see her get back into title contention, man.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And think about where the state of the division is, right? Like, who's the next obvious contenders? Well, one of them's fighting for the championship right now. One of them is Erin Blanchfield. All right, name me 3 other contenders that you care about. Okay, you can't do it. Tatiana Suarez, welcome back. You're a contender. That's it. It's really that simple. So I think that if she wins this fight, she's right back in title contention. She's right back at the tip of everybody's tongue. And I just hope that it doesn't interfere with our girl Erin Blanchfield getting the title shot, because that would be some good opportunities, in my opinion. But yeah,
bro.
Yeah.
How good would that be? Tatiana wins, she's back in contention. She fights bloody Valentina, America versus Russia. Fucking Ivan Drago shit. That'd be something special.
Hey, but we've already got our representative, Erin Blanchfield. Them New York boys and girls going to teach you how to wrestle. Patchy Mix did it once. Erin Blanchfield did it twice. Let's go. I'm fired up for these New York athletes. Aljamain Sterling already got that title, already taught the Russians once. We still got it. We can still take the back and hold on. God damn it. All right. Body lock is the new meta. If Muniz comes out here and does the body lock for the whole 15 minutes, I'll puke in my hands. But we still got one more fight before we get to my most profitable guy on the card, Muniz. And it's Augusto Sakai and Don'Tale Mayes. So we don't have to spend all day on this one, but there could be some opportunities here from a betting perspective. I think that there is. On the one hand, you've got somebody who is favored in this fight coming in with 4 straight knockout losses. That's extremely concerning to me in terms of, backing somebody that is in that condition. Number 2, we're talking about heavyweight, right? We're not talking about a division where knockouts are infrequent. It happens a lot at heavyweight. So when it starts happening to you very frequently at 31 years of age, got to put the brakes on being super confident betting on you. That being said, as a closing line favorite, Augusto Sakai never lost. As a closing line underdog, he's never won. So it's like this guy's kind of been exactly what you make of him. But in this fight, I feel like people are getting trapped by a common theme that can – now, I could look like an asshole. Understand that. I could look like an asshole if I'm wrong about this one. I'll be wrong about some of these. But from a broad standpoint, when I look at fights and I see somebody that I think is being overvalued as a favorite, that's when I want to get on the other side. And I think Don'Tale Mayes, classic recency bias spot, where no one wants to bet on Don'Tale Mayes right now after the Hamdi sell job. He looked terrible. He's going for takedowns against an Olympic wrestler, putting himself flat back. Like, he did a bunch of things that would make you go, wow, Don'Tale Mayes is a real bonehead. I don't want to trust him with my money. And that's fair if that's your take coming out of it. But Augusto Sakai, on the other hand, is now being trusted with a lot of money that I don't think he deserves to be trusted with, because his chin is extremely suspect. He's fighting a guy who's faster, who's longer, who's taller, who can hit from further out, and who throws one shot that hurts people a lot of the time. And so I think Don'Tale Mayes is no prize. But as the plus money side in a volatile heavyweight fight, give me Don'Tale Mayes in this fight. I think that he wins the fight. I think that he's live to finish the fight. I think that Augusto Sakai is not long for the UFC. I know he's fought a high level of competition, but that's the broad theme that I think people often buy into. He's fought these great guys. Yeah, but he's getting knocked out bad in the first round. He's getting knocked out in the second round. He's getting face planted by everybody he's fighting. How am I going to continue to trust this guy after he burns me? Yes, this is a more winnable fight than some of those other fights, but it wasn't like he was priced as a plus 500 in those fights. People thought those were winnable. People bet him in those fights, and they lost coins because he lost all those fights and he got knocked out. And by the way, he won a split decision he probably didn't deserve to get into these, big fights. Anyway, I've got to remember who that was against. Was it tied to Avasa? Am I bugging? No, it was Blagoy Ivanov. Was his last win. He didn't win that fight. So he's on a 5-fight losing streak, depending on who you ask. Then before that, he beat Marcin Tybura by knockout in round 1. Kind of a meme outcome because Augusto Sakai is really not knocking out anybody. Marcin, his chin comes and goes like the wind. I think he's been on better supplements lately. God bless him for it. Another split decision win over Andrei Arlovsky. So it's just red flag city. The guy's last 2 wins in the UFC are split decisions, right? Now, granted, getting the split against Andre is a feat in and of itself. Nobody does that, but he got the split against Andre. He gets the split against Ivanov, and then he gets flatlined, and now he's 55% favorite? I don't buy it. I think it's at best a pick'em fight. I don't think there should be any plus money on Dontel Mays. So that's my take. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I don't really like the fight either. And I agree with everything you've said. I don't see why Mays is such a big underdog here. He went up to plus 120 at one point. The only thing I don't like about Mays is he weighs in sometimes at like 240, and against, you could argue it, couldn't you? You could say, that's not ideal against these big guys who, on Fight Night at like 270 or whatever. But you could also say that speed kills. He is going to have the faster hands, Mays. From his Instagram, he looks ready. He looks motivated. And like you say, Sakai's lost like his last couple of fights. I don't understand how they make him the favorite in this one. And I don't like to see it in guys. People are betting it. That's how. It's like dog or pass again. Like a lot of these fights on this card. Yeah, some people are just crazy, man. The things they bet. Betting OSP against Lins. I told everyone he's on steroids. So you bet Lins or you fucking pass. And everyone's like, no, OSP still got it, even though he looked like shit at weigh-ins. Yeah, people are crazy, man. Yeah, I like Mays. I think he could get a KO. But just take the money line, put a unit on it, man.
Yeah, I don't hate that approach at all. You got to understand, when we say that it's a dog or pass situation, it doesn't mean you have to take every dog. It doesn't mean you have to, just fire at every fight on the card. You can be judicious. You can be prudent in how you decide which fight I'm going to target, which fight I'm going to pass on. But what we're talking about is the quality of fighters. What we're talking about is the reliability of them as an investment asset. And it's not good for most of these people. Like, these are lower level UFC fights. These are volatile fight night cards. And so the favorites have been overperforming this year, by and large. That's going to eventually come around. In either case, you don't want to trust somebody with your money when they don't have a complete skill set, when they don't have proven cardio, when they there's all these things that you want to check the boxes before you start laying chalk with somebody. And if you don't have that, it's a dog or pass situation almost by definition. So just in terms of how we approach these fights, unless somebody's really proven, like, who's the most proven fighter on this card that you're sure is going to win? Tatiana Suarez. She's minus 800. It's like, yeah, the bookmaker is well aware of that. But then on these other fights, people are going to come in and bet the favorites, and they're going to have to get it right 60% of the time in fights where, it's very volatile and it could go either way. So that's not what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to look for plus money angles this week and most weeks. And, unless somebody really earns your trust, you don't want to be betting into them at big chalk lines. And again, Augusto Sakai, he's been profitable as a favorite. I'll give you that. But outside of that, he's given you no reason to believe that he is going to win a fight in the UFC.
Exactly, bro. Like, I agree 100% on your thoughts on the dog or pass situation. Each week I put out these tweets. I put out, this week it was, if you're going to bet on Cowan, don't. And then I'll go into why. That doesn't advocate a bet for Perez. It just means that you shouldn't be betting on Cowan at like minus 160, whatever she opened. She's prone to subs and wrestling. That's what Perez does. So you take the pass, or like you take the dog, or you pass on the situation. WW in the chat. Sakai has fought the much better opposition. What about when Dante fought Cyril Gane? You know what I mean?
He trains with John Jones. No,
Yeah,
you don't get much better competition than that.
Yeah.
But dude, and the thing is, WW, I agree with you. He has fought the better level of competition. But then the UFC kind of find out what they had. They're like, oh, this guy can't beat anybody good that we have, you know? And when he does fight the guys that are even old that he should be cleaning up and getting rid of, they either take him late like Alistair Overeem and finish him just by getting out-wrestled by Alistair Overeem at like 38, 39 years old, just easily out-wrestled him. And then conversely, right, you see Don'Tale Mayes showing some signs of improvement between fights, and then he tried to out-wrestle. He was very confident. He thought he was going to out-wrestle Hamdi. He got thrown around for it. It's like he still competed in that fight, and I think Hamdi had such a low bar of expectation, and I didn't see it that way going in, where I didn't bet on Hamdi, but I was like, are we really that confident in Don'Tale Mayes, ladies and gentlemen? And now I feel like I'm on the other side. I'm like, Don'Tale Mayes could definitely win this fight. I don't know why everybody's so bullish on the Sakai side. I think Sakai could win the fight theoretically. I mean, like you mentioned, he's the bigger guy physically, so he could just lean on him, try and press him against the fence, grease out that kind of close split decision. I think that's his path. Is that a minus 135, minus 140 path in a heavyweight fight where like half of them or more end by knockout? I don't think so.
Yep.
And I think Mayes has a better chin. So for whatever it's worth, that's my takeaways. Next up, guys, another Brazilian to talk about. This one has been reliable with your money so far in the UFC. Hardest fight to date for Andre Muniz is going to be against Brendan Allen. Last loss for Andre Muniz was against Azmat Mirzakhanov in Russia in 2016. Prior to that, he has not lost since 2013. So this guy's done a whole lot of damn winning in his career, tell you the truth. I think Andre Muniz is one of the most talented guys that people don't talk about in the UFC, but he does have clear flaws. So talking about betting on this fight, I think betting on Muniz here at a huge chalk price could end up looking like a mistake. You could end up looking like a genius, like in the Uriah Hall fight, where even though, he was a little bit tired at the end of the fight, he was so positionally sound that he could beat Uriah Hall to positions, get to his spots, get to takedowns, and then hold on to them, hold on to control, win the fight on the scorecards. I don't think he has that potential against everybody in the UFC that can fight at a really high pace, that can force him to scramble. However, I think that his submission grappling is among the best in the UFC. I think it's among the best at 185 it's probably the best at 185 by a margin. And on top of that, he has unique skills. Like his armbar series is the best in the UFC, and he doesn't do it from the bottom only. He does it from the bottom. He does it from the back. He does it in transition. He does it falling off the side. He does it when you try and escape the triangle choke. So I think that he has a really diverse game that's extremely dangerous on the ground. And the reason I think he's going to win this fight is because Brendan Allen is a confident guy. He's willing to engage in grappling, and I think it will be to his detriment. He ended up engaging in the grappling with Kevin Holland for extended periods of time. They went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and Brendan Allen outlasted him. But he didn't do that without putting himself in 3-4 compromised positions along the way. He got stuck in a front headlock. He got stuck in a mount. He literally went for a guillotine and put himself underneath against the fence in mount. Then he turned, gave his back to Kevin Holland, and Kevin Holland took his back, pulled him into the back mount, and was backpacking him in the first round. If that happens against Andre Muniz, the fight is over. I hate to tell people, the fight is over. It's not going to be a contest at that point. Andre Muniz is extremely dangerous from there. Uriah Hall was thinking, do not get hurt. Do not do anything that could get me out of this situation. Just do anything to not get hurt. And so when he went for the armbar, he would explode out because otherwise he was going to get his arm broken. Other than that, he would just go here, hand fight, keep it tight, because he didn't want to get finished. And who could blame him? I mean, Muniz is just going to finish you if you don't defend. So I felt like Muniz just had a comfortable, easy path to victory, and he was like, why not take it? Yeah, this guy's doing a good job hand fighting and whatever. I'm going to keep going for my armbar. I'm going to keep him under duress, but I don't have to do anything to win this fight. I don't think it's going to be like that with Brendan Allen. I think Brendan's going to move. I think he's going to try and create scrambles, be dynamic, and I think he's going to have to tap because I think Muniz is a step ahead of him in the grappling. I think he's going to get takedowns when he wants them in this fight. We saw against Malkoun, not a great job of defending the takedown. He's too willing to engage in the ensuing grappling and wrestling exchange. And if you do that enough times against Muniz, you will get submitted. Guys that have never been submitted before have been submitted by Muniz. It happened against Eric Anders when everybody told me, they're like, bro, don't bet on Muniz here, bro. Eric Anders never been subbed. Like, he's had a lot of fights. He's fought good guys. So I was like, all that is absolutely true. But this is the best jiu-jitsu fighter he's ever fought. And he got submitted. And he nearly got his arm broke. And if you ask Eric Anders about that, he'll tell you, Muniz is a fucking freak. And he took me down easily. He's so strong. And he has an incredible armbar series. And all that's true. So I just think that people, because Brendan Allen is good at jiu-jitsu for UFC standards, they have an idea that these guys are on a similar playing field. And I think that that's not true, because when you look at Muniz, he's like a lifelong jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's like a third Dan in jiu-jitsu. He's one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners by rank in UFC history, period. Like Damian Maia, like these, that's where he is on the charts of like how long you've been doing this, how respected you are in jiu-jitsu. Damian Maia is like here, and then you got guys like Muniz, and he submitted Jacare, by the way. Only guy to ever submit Jacare. By the way, before that fight, I said Muniz might submit Jacare, because if you've ever seen older, really talented guys going with younger, really talented guys in jiu-jitsu, it becomes a lot more competitive, right? Especially when you're talking about 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds. The athletic dynamism starts to favor the younger, more dynamic 30-year-old, even if they might not have the same technical knowledge. So it's why jiu-jitsu is a little bit of give and take. But Muniz, the older fighter here by 6 years, he's spent all that time doing grappling. He's the better grappler, guys. And I think that he's dangerous to win this fight by sub. Every loss for Muniz is by knockout. I think that people have it in their head that Muniz is not at all like a threat on the feet, which I think is wrong as well. That's the other thing I wanted to address here. If you go back and watch his footage, he knocks people down. He hurts people. It's just he doesn't have very good defense. He doesn't have very good comfortability. He doesn't want to be on the feet. So he throws big, wild shots and then goes for a takedown. That's what he normally does. And sometimes guys are so desperate to try and land on him in the early going that they get hurt first. He knocked, I forget who it was, Taylor Johnson, I think it was, knocked him to his hands and knees, I believe, on the Contender Series. Like, he just takes guys off. They're not expecting it, and then he hits them pretty hard. But he's not great at taking the shots on the comeback. He's been knocked out in the first round on a number of occasions in his career, but it's been a long time. That's the other thing I want to point out. And Asmat Mirzakhanov is a UFC level loss. So his only UFC level loss, or his only loss, since 2013 was a knockout at the UFC level against a guy who's dangerous and proven that he can knock out a lot of fighters. So I think that for me, I don't want to trust Muniz on the money line here. I think it's a little bit too steep, but I think that from a submission standpoint, I think he's going to get the sub. So I think there might be some value on some carefully selected props here. What do you think?
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, I agree. The jiu-jitsu level between the two is totally different. Muniz is way above. Yeah, when I first seen this bout, I was like, no way, finally, I've got someone who's got a bit of hands, who's going to like finally test that chin of Muniz, because I do believe he's chinny. I just think, you said it's been a while since he's been knocked out, but that's because he's been fighting wrestlers and grapplers in like Taylor Johnson, Fabinski, Souza. Anders was too scared to do anything. Hall was too scared. Hall broke in 2 minutes, then just went into defense mode for the next bloody 12 and a half minutes. It was embarrassing. So yeah, I really wanted to bet Brendan Allen here. I'm not going to. Nobody told me he was literally full retard. I thought Anthony Smith was bad with the things that he says. I watched the interview for Brendan Allen. You know what this guy said? He's like, yeah, he's probably going to submit me, or I'm going to KO or submit him, or it could go to decision. It's like, well, that's profound, isn't it? Like, good insight. Thanks for that knowledge. This guy is a total idiot, man. I don't trust him at all. I think he is going to play footsie on the ground. I think he does feel like his jiu-jitsu's on par or even better, which would be a mistake. I think fight doesn't go the distance is good. Under 2.5 is good. But yeah, I'd never trust Brendan Allen after hearing his interview this week. I don't like him at all, man.
Yeah, and the other thing to point out here, guys, I try and give you both sides of the coin. So the thing to like about Brendan Allen this week, he's 5-1 as an underdog in the UFC. He's been discounted before. He's been underlooked before. But he's also fumbled the bag for people before. So that's why there's been a love-hate relationship with Brendan Allen throughout his UFC run. I think this is the time to sell. I think that he could eventually be, a top 5, top 10 type of guy in the UFC. But I think right now, in terms of the skill sets that would be interesting to pit against the top guys in the division, Muniz is right there. Like, the story tells itself. He's the best guy on the ground in the division. So if he submits this guy who's a black belt, who people rate on the ground, then it's like, what would he do to these purple belts that hold the title? What would he do to these 2 kickboxers that are fighting for the strap? I think that Muniz, quietly building himself into a title contender's resume. If he can go 6-0 in the UFC, that's a big piece of the pie. So he's on a big win streak. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, another thing I needed to mention, I think my record on fading and betting on Brendan Allen is pretty amazing, to be honest. I think I've called every time he's been knocked out by Chris Curtis. Sean Strickland is obviously primarily a jiu-jitsu guy. When I think he can get that sub because the other person is subpar, I'll bet him by sub. When I think he's fighting Chris Curtis with good takedown defense and Sean Strickland, I know he's going to break on the feet and get knocked out like he does here. Like I said, if this was a pure stand-up fight, I'd bet Allen to win by KO, but it's not. There's grappling involved, and I just don't trust him, man.
Yeah, and I think that he's just a big body, Muniz. That's the other thing that just gets discounted
man.
About him. I talked about Beneil and some of these guys that just have a weirdly big back. Nobody's got a back as big as fucking Andre Muniz. It's incredible. So I think that's the other thing. He's just got some anthropomorphic advantages here that make him an interesting target. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. So it's not like Brendan Allen's just going to have free target practice on him from distance. I do think one of the strikes that Brendan Allen throws is that teep kick up the middle, which would be wise for him to invest in early and often here. Muniz, that's one of the strikes that gets through on him. But if you throw round kicks, he's good at catching them. So I think that Brendan Allen's got to be a lot more intentional about his game planning here, or he's going to end up on his back early. And if that happens, Muniz is just a problem for everybody. So I think Muniz will win and make it look easy.
Another thing to mention is when I was watching the tape, I watched Muniz first, and he goes in with a lot of single legs. Obviously, he hit the double leg on Anders, but he likes the single legs, man. So I was like, okay, let's go see what Allen's takedown defense is like. I go and watch against Holland, who Holland was on short notice. Holland was taking him down, gassed out, got subbed, but he was taking him down. I go and watch Malkoun. I don't know how Malkoun lost that fight. Malkoun was putting on a wrestling clinic on Allen. His takedown defense isn't good, and like you say, this big, strong Brazilian is going to take him down. I think if you're playing Allen, take a small shot on the KO, but he's likely going to get subbed, man. I don't see how he doesn't.
I agree. And if I was the kind of person that would hedge, I would be looking at Allen by KO as the hedge. I didn't end up taking any shares of that, but, plus 850, I think that's probably his most likely win condition. Again, you don't just have to look at how people win fights. I know Brendan Allen's not known for being like a Superman knockout puncher, like huge, heavy-handed guy. However, Andre Muniz has 4 career losses, every one of them by knockout. It's like you just have to do some evaluating, like, oh, maybe just when Muniz loses, it's most likely going to be by knockout, even if it's Brendan Allen. So I think that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Oftentimes, fatigue and being tense is a big part of getting knocked out. And that's the case for Andre Muniz. When he's on the ground, he's extremely comfortable. He's extremely dangerous. He can fight for 15 minutes. But when he's forced to be on the feet for extended periods of time, it's exhausting because he's nervous. He's like, I don't want to be here. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I game planned for. So he does have the kind of jiu-jitsu that I love, though, man. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's over. I love guys like that. I think he's that talented, and I think that might be what we're in for on Saturday night. But if the fight gets extended, Allen live, also probably not a bad way to look. But just for full disclosure, Brendan Allen's only submission loss was in round 2, for whatever it's worth. And Muniz tends to be a round 1 finish guy, but he also has a couple second round submissions as well. Next up, the main event, big time here. Nikita Krylov taking on Ryan Spann at 205 pounds. I found it very interesting that this was surprising to me. I shared it with you that, Ryan Spann said that he got the call before Jamal Hill about, hey, Yuri's going to be out. We're going to be needing guys to step up for title fights or whatever, which I was baffled to hear that. I think he's on a 2-fight win streak now. And his loss was in a main event to Anthony Smith. I think that was put together on short notice as well, if memory serves. But either way, Anthony Smith, former title challenger, got a couple wins over former UFC champions as well, former title challengers as well. So Anthony Smith, not a throwaway light heavyweight, but certainly that's like the bright spot on his resume lately. And meanwhile, a lot of people poke holes in the Ryan Spann resume. They say he hasn't beaten anybody good. And, you look at the streaks of the fighters that he's been fighting. Yeah, they haven't been very good. But then I would encourage you guys to make sure you do the same calculations on the Krylov side, just because I think that he's certainly got a better reputation. He's been around for a long time. He's obviously very skilled. But just looking at the numbers, 10-7 overall record in the UFC, his wins, Volkan Ozdemir hasn't been on the right side of a lot of fights lately. Old Volkan. Alexander Gustafsson has not won a fight since 2018. Paul Craig loses that fight. By the way, Paul Craig's been on hard time since then. That was like his last bright spot. I think Nikita Krylov might have beaten some of the durability out of him before he got submitted there. Magomed Ankalaev loses the decision there after winning the first round. And by the way, winning first rounds hasn't always been a problem for Krylov. He's been very dangerous in all of his first rounds. But I think that I would encourage you to go back if you've never seen it and watch the Soal Palele fight, where it was his first fight in the UFC. It was at heavyweight. He's a different guy now. But the dynamics are pretty similar, where he went out there and he's beating the guy up and he's moving him around. He's feeling good. And then as the fight went on, he gasses out too. And the number one thing that you can blame Ryan Spann for in his career, besides the fact that he gets hit, he's a little bit less durable than you'd like for light heavyweight, let's say, to be polite. But it's not like Ryan Spann doesn't have extreme power. I mean, even in the fights where he's losing, he sent Johnny Walker to do the chicken dance 3 times in 4.5 minutes or whatever it was. I thought he landed some good connections on Anthony Smith, who then just was like, grapple, where I could take this guy into deep water. I don't think Spann is the best real-time decision maker. He had Johnny Walker as good as knocked out and just was like, I'm going to throw myself in on a takedown. I don't know why. If anybody else was in there, they would be like, I'm going to stand as far away from this guy as I can and just pick my shots. I'm going to throw 1-2s and I'm going to get him out of here. So I think that Spann is extremely dangerous, man. I think that he is underrated in terms of his skills and in terms of what he's produced so far in the UFC. He's 7-2. Sam Alvey, that fight was a gross look, admittedly, but he has said, I never did strength and conditioning as a primary part of my training. I never trained for longer than 3 weeks for a fight. And now he's got the key to the gym at Fortis MMA. His primary training partner is Kennedy Nzechukwu, and he's talking about winning the light heavyweight title and then moving up to heavyweight so Kennedy can get it next. It's like they've got a plan. Fortis MMA has been getting a lot better, right? In terms of what they've been producing in results. They did pretty well last year. I believe they got the gym of the year. Saif Sayoud is all over UFC broadcasting. They like the guys at Fortis MMA. They're doing a show in Texas. Wouldn't it be something if they could turn around Ryan Spann fresh off a win for another show in Texas? I'm just saying. But either way, right, I think that Ryan Spann has some upside, truthfully, in the division. I think that he's a guy that most people aren't aware of and familiar with because his only main event spot, he got finished. But I think that if he gets a big win in the main event over somebody credible like Nikita Krylov, could change the trajectory of his career. On the other side of things, Nikita Krylov's a dangerous guy. He's got a ton of finishes. I believe 22 out of 29 career wins are inside the first round. So the guy gets to work. But then you start looking through some of the wins in the UFC. Johnny Walker, via gross decision where there was a lot of sloppy grappling on both sides. And I think a more aggressive hunter of the submission could have punished Krylov there. Instead, Johnny Walker tried to get to good positions and he couldn't help himself but do something stupid and get reversed. Because he got several advantageous spots on Krylov as he was gassing out. I think that Spann, his problems are not mostly, physical. They're mostly technical and emotional. He gets wrapped up in being nervous. And he said, I was always scared to get tired. That's something I could personally relate to. When I was in high school, I was afraid to get tired before every match, and it made me perform like shit and get tired, right? So I had to do mental, psychological tools to get myself to stop thinking like that. Ryan Spann gets coached through every position by Saif Sayoud, and they tell him exactly what to do. And then he goes out there and does a much better job. I don't take these recent wins as confirmation that he has no problems anymore. He's certainly a volatile guy. You can't trust him with a huge sum of money. But I do think that where they project athletically in terms of their long-term upside, Nikita Krylov is still making mistakes that got him caught back in his first run in the UFC, getting submitted by Paul Craig. I always say Paul Craig, best guard at 205, but there's a lot of guys that didn't get submitted by Paul Craig. You know, there's a lot of guys that were able to just beat up Paul Craig and stay safe. So I felt like that was a concern for me, where he's been getting submitted his whole career, and then he's still getting submitted in foolish ways, engaging too long on the ground. Ryan Spann isn't like a jiu-jitsu savant with all these knowledge of all these intricate holds. He's probably not going to hit an omoplata, but his guillotine is as good as anybody I've seen at light heavyweight, period. It's extremely dangerous. And he has length on his arms, so he can torque it where the guy goes to sleep in 3-5 seconds. He's almost breaking your neck, so you have to tap. Like, the guy just has an incredible set of attributes, right? He's got 6'5" height. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage in this matchup. And so Nikita Krylov, he's dangerous with the kicks. He's explosive. He's got a lot of intricate maneuvers. He could get takedowns potentially. He gives up takedowns. He's got terrible takedown defense. He seems like he's off balance. He's constantly on one foot throwing kicks, so he could get blasted by a counter here from Ryan Spann, who's unloading right hands like they're going out of business. That's why he gasses out so quick. That's why people die when he's in there. He hits them with right hands that are very powerful. And by the way, if Dominic Reyes didn't go to sleep on that jab, he was going to sleep on the right hand that was coming right behind it like a missile that ended up hitting him on the top of the head because he was already asleep. So I just can't have much faith in Krylov here. I think that his wins are just as suspect as Spann's wins in a certain way. He's got the better experience. He's a little more trustworthy with the cardio, but I think the margins are a little too thin here. I think if it was -125, -120 Krylov, I'd get it more. I think that at the -150, -160, I can't trust it. Light heavyweight's too volatile. Give me Spann here. I think he gets it done inside the distance. What do you think?
Yeah, I mostly agree, man. I think you can make an argument for both sides. I do like Spann. I do think he's going to finish, and I think in the distance is the play. It ain't going to decision. But you can make an argument, man. You can disparage Ryan Spann's wins if you go take a look at him. You know,
Easily.
he takes that
easily.
He takes the L to Johnny Walker. He knocks out Misha. You know, big whoop. Misha's chinny as fuck. We know that. He loses to Anthony Smith. He catches Ion in a guillotine, and then he beats Reyes coming back, who I think was just mentally defeated. To be honest, I don't know what was up with Reyes. I think he's done. So you can make an argument, but I think what's important here is Krylov is a front runner. He comes in, he blitzes, he tries to like bum rush people, and then he goes for a takedown. If he can't get his way in a fight and get his early finish, you know, if he can't get his quick KO and then a submission on the ground, if you know people are resilient, he fades, man. And I think that's what's going to happen. He's going to come out, he's going to bum rush him, try and knock him out. Not going to work. He's going to drop for a takedown. He's going to get it. I think he's going to lay on top for round 1. I think it starts on the feet. Obviously, round 2, he comes out and he's either going to get caught in the guillotine in round 2, taking him down again, or he's going to try and exchange on the feet and get dropped by Spann. Spann's got power. Yes, Spann's chinny. I watched the tape. I've seen him get knocked out plenty of times. But it's just a feeling I've got, man. I'm going for round 2, and I think it'll probably be a KO for Spann. But I'm not ruling out the guillotine, man, because I do think Krylov is going to shoot. That's what he does. He wrestles. If he can't get his way in round 1, he's going to come out and wrestle like he did to Johnny Walker. He's going to try and make it boring, lay on you. Like I said, if you're resilient and you can, you know, withstand these submission attempts, you can get a W, man.
And I think when you look at somebody like Ryan Spann, right, it doesn't make sense that he's got such a bad chin, because he looks like a great athlete, right? He looks like a big, powerful guy. He looks like he should be able to take a shot, and he wasn't able to take a great shot for most of his career. But then he tells you, I've never trained for these fights. I'm coming in out of shape. I'm scared. I'm going to get tired. All those things being knocked out. If anything he said in the media is winning the fight, you know, maybe in the second round, maybe in the third. I just have a feeling that he wouldn't make this kind of claim last time. From Johan Lainesse. That's my only concern here, is that Spann goes out to try and prove a point about cardio. But I think if so, it'll be a second or third round finish. It's light heavyweight. Both these guys are going to die if this goes into the 5th round. So yeah, I like this fight to end inside the distance. And seems like we're just now starting to have a little bit of a connection problem. So might as well cut it here. Say, great show. I hope that you guys all learned something today. Had a pleasure being here. Rich, please tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, same as always, man. Check me out on Twitter, Just Win Baby. Join the Patreon, link in the description. And yeah, get these bets, man. Blanchfield, biggest bet of the year last week. Yeah, before that, Dan Ige in the distance, Tiara in the distance, Tybora, etc., etc. Gonna be a big year, man.
Yes, sir. Episode 1 in the books, folks. Please make sure, if you haven't already, go ahead and follow Rich at Just Win Baby. It's in the description below, like I mentioned. As for myself, Liam Picks Fights. You can find me picking fights in written format, video format, every way that you could possibly imagine. Make sure, guys, if you haven't already, please drop a like on this video. Get subscribed to the channel. It really means a lot. Gonna have consistent content coming from us each and every week on these UFC fights. So stay tuned for that. Gonna try and release this as an episode on podcast platforms as well. So stay tuned for that in the very near future. Until next time, God bless you all. I hope you guys enjoyed the fights. We'll see you next time. Go win some bets, everybody.